Mach 3, give me crew show on 2, 3, and 4.
Line 1, exit 1.
6, 3. Mach 3, give me start line 2.
5 electric. Mach 3. Line 2, Mach 9.
Mach 3, give me start line 1 and crew show on 7 and 9.
Line 1, crew show 7 and 9, Mach 9.
Yeah, do something. I hate weapons.
Super Ops, line 3, Reservoir Avionics.
Super Ops. Line 7 is code 3 for Flickas.
Fuck. Hey, so I started a Patreon because frankly, this stuff's getting expensive. Nothing will change the podcast or the blog if you don't subscribe, but if you want early access to episodes, monthly AMAs, episode shoutouts, voting on podcast topics, and all kinds of 20 Years Done gear, head over to patreon.com/20yearsdone. So today I'm joined by Jim Tibbetts and Ashley Grugan, the creator of The Diary of a Mixed Woman. I served with Jim a little while in my career, and since we stayed in contact, he's been on the podcast at least twice, I believe. And Ashley's been on the podcast, I want to say like 4 or 5 times, maybe counting the discussion she hosted. So I probably don't have to introduce them. Everybody knows them. And today I really want to talk about, I'm going to start out right with the bat. I think it's fucking stupid. We're talking about it like right off the bat. I think it's fucking stupid.
You were thinking the exact same thing I was thinking.
Like, it's stupid. It's stupid for a few reasons, but I guess I should spit out what the topic is. Today we're going to talk about, is it Chief Bass or Chief Bass, and all the kind of the interactions between social media and the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force office, and everything that kind of happened. So, I guess I'll frame the events, and then we can kind of dissect it chronologically, I guess, is what we'll do. So I think it was I'm already behind. I think it was so it was last Friday. Actually, last Saturday, the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force posted a picture with some people at a deployed location that engaged in a video conference with her. And a staff sergeant happened to post on her page, is it Bass or Bass is what happened. Or sorry, is it Bass or Bass? And I'm probably, like I said, before we even started, I'm probably going to screw up, is it Bass or Bass? Because now I know how to say her name. So I'm just going to say Bass and Bass every single time. But I hope everybody understands what I mean. The initial response from the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force was, first of all, she called him by his rank, even though he didn't necessarily broadcast his rank. And it said something to the effect of, seems like you and a few of your friends enjoy trolling our Air Force sites. Give me a call Monday. I'd like to chat about it. Maybe I'm missing something. And then somebody asked if there was a joke, and a few comments down, the Chief Master in the Air Force replied, "Oh, absolutely. I have a sense of humor. I love to have fun and laugh. But disrespect trolling doesn't go over well with me. My team has Sergeant Banks' info as well as his crew. I'm sure there's a solid explanation, right?" So obviously over the weekend, it kind of exploded with, really, it seemed like people were splitting into 2 camps, and there was a lot of vitriol going back and forth. And then the creative meme generators of the internet began churning out a lot of memes, making jokes at it. And then on Monday, after the apparent phone call, Chief Bass posted a picture with pronunciation. And I'd like to point out that for at least aircraft maintainers, in my experience, they really struggle with trying to figure out even the pronunciation graphic. It wasn't clear. And then it basically said the words to the effect of, he didn't mean to, his question was simple and honest, and she wanted to understand where he was coming from, and respect was a two-way street. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but I'll post a link to it as well. And then it implied that there would be some sort of collaboration to make the Air Force better, and kind of send Sergeant Banks on his way. My comment on that was, if the Chief Master in the Air Force had gotten any assurance from his chain of command to make sure that it was something he could recover from, there wouldn't be like deep sort of retaliatory or punitive actions taken against him, either administratively or otherwise, to which I didn't receive a response. And then later on in that thread, the gentleman that had posted the original, was it bass or bass. And after the apparent phone call, posted a comment that is very well written and suspiciously so, I will say. I'll read it. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about this. I recognize my posts were persistent and antagonizing. The intent was never disrespectful, but now I understand that what I thought was a silly joke actually detracts from your social media objectives and increases unnecessary traffic and workload for you as well as your team. We're on the same page, and I look forward to what the future holds. Hashtags bass or bass and hashtags accountability. So I guess right away, we'll start with you, Jim, just because you're the person that used to be a chief. What did you think of the initial handling of somebody on social media asking, is it bass or bass?
I mean, when I first saw it, I was kind of like, wow, it's kind of brave. And then once I thought about it another half second, I was like, a simple answer. I mean, if it was legitimately just a simple question, how about a simple answer? It's bass and a little friggin', like the fish or something. And it would have either gone away if it was a legitimate question, or if he was really trolling, then it would have gone further. She accused him of trolling different sites, which I really don't know if it was a legitimate question or not. I find it hard to believe a staff sergeant doesn't know. It was just like Chief Wright, Caliph or Khalif, you know what I'm saying? But
wait, I don't know the answer to that. Was it Caliph or Khalif?
Khalif.
Oh, I said that wrong the whole time.
But it was,
so
exactly. But it never became an issue because, I mean, who cares? I mean, in the big scheme of things, most people were going to say Chief Wright, just like going to say Chief Bass or what. But kind of looking at it, after it kind of started blowing up, I was like, she should have just, if in fact it was she. Again, I'm not in her job. I don't know what guidance she's getting from PA. I would imagine there might have been some feeding there, but just let it just scroll on by, because now it's blown up. I mean, that dude's famous. He's going to walk into a DFAC and everybody's going to be, there's that guy. I always take to the, any kind of punishment or anything that could come across as negative, do that in private. A simple Facebook message or shoot an email. I mean, Loop is flag chief, and so it doesn't look like strong arming or anything, but just say, hey, I don't know if you know how this looks, but you know what I'm saying? Rather than now he's been called out, people take sides, and how much time was wasted by PA people, by friggin' a chief, by his section chief, all these other people over something I would call trivial.
Ashley?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I have to strongly agree. When I first saw it, my initial reaction to Chief Bass's response to Banks, I thought that it was a little unnecessary. And I agree with Chief Tibbetts. I would have just kept scrolling, because I mean, when you look at Chief Wright's page, he had all kinds of trolls on there all the time, and some of those people said some pretty fucked up shit on there. I paid attention to that kind of stuff, and the ones that needed to be addressed would be addressed, whether it was in the comment thread. Like if it was a legitimate question, he would answer it, and if it was meant to be antagonizing, it didn't really matter, because Chief Wright or his team or whoever is managing the page would answer that question, and it kind of just like took away the fun factor out of it. And then people just kind of would stop right then and there. But I feel like this particular response, it just antagonized the situation even more and gave it all the attention that it's gotten. And I think that, like Chief said, it's a trivial matter. If that would have been on my page, or something like that, I would have just kept scrolling. Like it's unnecessary. Even with everyone else commenting, is it saying the same things that he said, with everyone else doing that, it's bullshit. Just keep scrolling and then answer the questions that are really like real questions type of thing. So I think that whether it was her or her team or however that worked out in that situation, I think it was an overreaction. So
my initial thought was, at any time was the question answered? That's like the very first thing, because, okay, if the guy's trolling, and I think it's also important to note that, like, I'm not sure if I would call this trolling. Like, you're asking, is it bass or bass? Like, that's not a typical trolling sort of question to ask, right? But what it was is they're asking a either a playful sort of question. It's a play on words and all this stuff. And what they're doing is every time you don't answer it, you kind of give them a license to keep asking, because they have the top cover of a legitimate question. So they get to keep asking. So it almost perpetuates the response. I want to back up just a little bit and say there's been some comparisons like, oh, well, you know, Chief Cody was universally reviled by the enlisted force and he didn't receive this type of response. But the reality is we didn't have any engagement from the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force on social media until Chief Wright came along. And then you had somebody that was very much a man of the people, that was fixing things from right out the fucking gate. And he was signaling to the people that he was on their side and he was going to make their lives better. They created memes calling him enlisted Jesus, which, you know, it's playful and it's fun, but that seems to me to be way more trolly than, like, they were putting his head and stripes on, like, you know, sacred sort of pictures. And even though it was almost done affectionately, it was, you know, that's to me certainly worse than asking if it's bass or bass. So we had a terrible chief that nobody felt listened to him, and we didn't engage on social media. Then we had a really good chief that engaged every single day and had playful banter. And again, I don't know if it was him or his team. It very well could have been that he crafted his PA team to really understand the message and his tone, and they responded very well. Very often people would try to make a smart ass remark and he would, you know, fire back with an immediate rebuttal that was biting and smart and funny and literally just shut him the fuck down. And the reality is, asking if it's bass or bass, that is not a witty or clever sort of move. That's not a difficult comment to fucking disarm at all, right? Like I would have been, it's bass like the fish. Now that I've freed you from this burning question you've asked the last 17 times on our pages, I hope you can return to work and I won't have to address this with you anymore. That's literally all she would have had to say, which doesn't involve making a phone call to her office, which doesn't mean calling him out by his rank, which signals that she has some power and authority over him. Because if it was just a regular person, oh, go ahead, Ashley, go ahead.
I have a question. So was this guy, had he posted this on another one of her posts? Like, had he commented this on another post? So
the issue is there's no, okay. So the initial comment by the chief said, you know, you've been doing this a lot. You've been trolling other Air Force sites. So first of all,
yeah, she alluded to the fact that he'd been on multiple sites. I didn't take the time to go find anything.
Oh, hell no. Yeah. No.
So what the issue is first of all, Facebook is not an Air Force site, right? It's Facebook. I don't know if he was coming on AF.mil on those weird sort of news articles and forums. I don't know the answer to that. I saw someone had posted pictures of, is it bass or bass, like over and over from multiple people. But I think it's also important to note that the chief specifically said that you and your crew, implying that he had some sort of coordination between him and other people to kind of attack or...
That was, I took that as like a calling out. That was, I mean, to me, looking at the whole thing, I'm sorry I cut you off, but I'm glad you brought that up, because that whole you and your crew thing kind of almost was like, it was like a gotcha, you're in my crosshairs kind of. That's how it came across anyway. I'm sorry.
I got it as here's what I imagine. And I don't have any great insight here. Here's what I imagine. I think this guy and a bunch of other guys that don't have shit else to do because they're sitting around in their homes or whatever, because it's a pandemic, were on Reddit or some other sort of forum or social media, and the bass or bass started getting kicked around. And then they kind of migrated that to her page and started doing it. I don't think there was any grand scheme to coordinate. I don't think that it could be. So I think he was singled out because of it being a funny thing that they were doing, and he was kind of singled out heavily because of a guilt by association sort of thing. And you know, if the response had just been, hey, you need to leave it, you need to drop it. If he had asked again, he no longer has a, I don't know how to say your name excuse. And then you can kind of take him behind the shed, right? Because it's now you have clearly shown that it's not a legitimate question. He lost his license. He lost his license to claim ignorance on this because you told him. And then you could post something on her page, like pretty much what the fuck she did on Monday, which is here's the phonetic, here's the pronunciation, it's this or this, right? Like that would have been a great way to address it and disarm it. But unfortunately, escalated ridiculously fast. And we've all been around long enough to know that when you say, call me, like, give me a call on a public forum as the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
That's like hearing over the radio landline.
Like
call me on the landline.
And it's
you're
like,
about to get your ass chewed.
So, his supervisor got called on a Saturday. His first sergeant, his commander, his chief, his unit chief, whatever, the group commander, the wing commander, probably numbered Air Force, probably MAGCOM. Like, that's what we're doing over, is it base or BAS, right?
Yeah. And
then I think it's also really important to note, like I'm sure we've all been in trouble before, like deep trouble. I mean, I've written about all the deep trouble I've been in, but Ashley, I'm sure you've been in deep trouble, right?
Not really.
Okay, that's fine. Chief?
I wasn't goody two shoes. I mean, I got some paperwork for hitting a light with a chalk.
All right, that's Bush League. Chief, did you have anything that was like legit you got in trouble over that you were dreading? There's some fucking softies that I've invited.
Sort of, kind of. Well, no. I don't want to go into the whole story,
sure.
But yeah. I mean, I was a tech, and I was at Nellis, and I hear over the friggin' PA system, Tibbetts, please see the chief. Well, I didn't have time right that minute, but I knew he wanted right that minute. So I mean, and mine and his relationship wasn't the best anyways. So, and it turned out, I mean, but if I would have been guilty of what he accused me of, I would have been dreading it. I was just dreading it more so the not knowing. I remember when I was in A1C refueling a jet I grabbed the 70 JG instead of a 12 to refuel a jet, and QA caught me at night. So I was waiting until the morning time to, get my reaming there.
No, but like that.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but like, and that was the unit level, small scale sort of fuck up. You're talking about news articles were written by Sunday. Yeah. Like I'm sure there's going to be in the Air Force Times probably. Again, we're talking about it, and I have an audience of 2 or 3 million maintainers that listen to this podcast. Probably, I'm estimating, maybe. But like the amount of attention brought and the stress brought to this guy was that, and also it's like, was that necessary? Did that have to be that way? And what would have happened if this guy had done something catastrophic in the time between that comment and the phone call on Monday? Yeah. Like, how do you reconcile that? And obviously, I just hosted a podcast like 2 podcasts ago about how I was a terrible piece of shit and a toxic leader, right? Like, everybody's susceptible to it. But part of that is like recognizing where you screwed up and taking accountability for that. And then the fact that the sort of second comment she made was, my team has Staff Sergeant so-and-so's info as well as his crew. Like that's a very sort of, and never mind the fact that the kid didn't advertise from what I could tell, the kid didn't advertise his Air Force affiliation or anything else. Like, they had to like look for him in the gal to figure it out. So it's not like he was necessarily misrepresenting the Air Force as an image. This was very much it
was child's play. It was childish, and the response to it, I think, and
that's a good segue. Move on to the response if you want. I'm ready for that.
I don't want to say that Chief Bass is childish. I think that the response to that was childish. You're playing into their hands. I just feel like it exacerbated the situation when all they had to do was, like you said, here's how you say it, the phonetic or whatever, post that. And then if they keep going, then just like fucking let it go. Now, I could see if Banks had been going on multiple posts that she had done and had done that multiple times, like commented that on, that's trolling. You know what I mean? And then him starting it on that comment thread and then a bunch of other people doing it, those are all technically, to me, those are all trolls. They're trolling by doing that. You can tell that this is something that is stupid and annoying. That's trolling. But he himself, I don't think, from what I saw just on that post and that comment thread, what he said was not worth the energy that it was given. And then the response that came from Chief Bass's account, I think, was too much and exacerbated the situation. And that's basically why we're talking about it today, because it blew up into this fucking thing. Like you said, over the weekend, you had all these people get phone calls. You had to make a post about it on Monday morning, talking about how we talked about this shit and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I appreciate that they had, if they did have that conversation, and I don't know that Banks wrote that statement, but whatever.
Yeah, that seems pretty well crafted for a
well, somebody said that
ALS level graduate.
He's not a maintainer, so I gather he's from a career field that requires an ASVAB score higher than a fucking fork. So
okay, well, that's fair. That might be, yeah. But like, I just don't think that any of it was necessary. And I will say though that the post on Monday morning and reading what his response was to that, I think that it's good that they showed collaboration, but I thought that your question was a valid question on that comment post when you're talking about, are there going to be severe repercussions and shit like that because of it is not like he called her out of her name. He didn't make like a legitimately sexist comment. He didn't reflect great discredit upon the Air Force, which is, the first sentence of every LOCNL law. Right. So to me, it does not seem like it warranted the attention that it was given.
So between Saturday and Monday, we already know that the guy, his pucker factor was through the roof and his whole chain was like all hands on deck. Jim, what do you think was going on in the chief/PA sphere? The chief master on the Air Force /PA sphere?
That's...
I know honestly, it's all speculative, but I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, probably not a whole lot. I think those are, hey, Chief, we saw this on the page. I mean, I don't know the dynamic. Now reading you saying that she wasn't sitting there. There had to be some conversation. Is this right or is this right? And, I mean, maybe they landed, they flipped a coin and said, yeah, we're going to go this avenue. What I keep going back to is like, when I was new in a chief job, when I first get into an AMU, I mean, if I got into a situation I wasn't completely sure, call the last guy. I know he's retired or whatever, or say, hey, how did this guy do? Especially when you come after a successful person.
Yep.
You always have to go, okay, the default for now until I find my way is, what did the last crew do? So I mean, unless it was a wholehearted switch over there up in DC, which I mean, I wonder, how much if the steering came from PA up or from that chair down, or if she's. I mean, there had to be some kind of, because it's going out there on a public forum. So again, I'm just speculating, kind of talking, tongue in cheek. But it just seems strange to me that it would change so drastically when there's only one thing that's changed in that office.
I suspect that there's a new PA team. I don't think I have any evidence of that. I think no,
but usually when there's a leadership, they move everything
because they're establishing their new sort of mandate.
There seems to be like you seem to be there'd be precedent though. Again, precedent from the last, from history saying, hey, what do we do with this? Because the fact that there was even a response at all just says they didn't go back and look and go, what did the last group do when people put up stuff that was even worse? Would ask questions that you'd be so hard to want to reply to that you're like, man, if I reply to this, then now there's gonna be an expectation that I reply, where do I reply and where do I not? And then now that there has been interaction to that tedious little level, now what's it doing to the communication of people that would normally go on there and post things they think are harmless, or maybe a question that is this gonna get a phone call to a 3-star, a 2-star, 1-star, all the way down to a master sergeant because I asked something that they deemed to be stupid.
you know, and so I'm definitely going to give the chief and her team the benefit of the doubt. Like, this is coming right off the heels of that Air Force Times article that you sent me, Ashley, with those two sisters that were deployed.
Yep.
And there was some, I read it. I'm going to try to summarize it as quickly as possible, where there was lewd comments where the women almost like expected the lewd comments. Like, that's definitely a fucking problem, that the women were like expecting it and mostly unfazed, but they were super frustrated at the culture. And then, you know, you sent it to me and pointed out that the Chief Master in the Air Force had shared it and lent words to the effect of like, this shit isn't okay. And she's right. Like, that's
Absolutely.
like, that's not fucking under debate.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I think, I mean, when you look at, especially with the Marines, I think the Marines had a real issue with like sharing nude photos of service members and stuff like that in private
Mhm.
groups. Like, yeah, there's a fucking cultural issue here. I have no doubt. And I believe that the Chief Master of the Air Force was operating under the banner that this BAS or base thing was an extension of the culture that kind of allowed really kind of abusive online behavior. And that's really what she's alluding to. But disrespect and trolling doesn't go over well with me. Like, that's what she's kind of saying. But I think I just would have picked a much
different,
much more
if she was
egregious
waiting
sort of
for,
offense.
if they were just looking to send a message and finding the right topic or the right post, that wasn't it. Yeah.
I mean, it could be they were trying to set the floor really low for acceptable behavior. But the problem is, and this is the way I see it, what they also did was, because his comment was so kind of innocuous between is it base or bass, it very well could be read as it wasn't that big of a trolling sort of ordeal. What they've also done is they've really signaled to don't engage with the Chief Master in the Air Force on her social media anymore.
That's
That's
what
what
my
I was
first
gonna
concern.
say.
That's what. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I agree 100%. I think we
No,
are all on
that
the
was
same
that
page.
was my overarching message I picked up after, now that the whole thing played out, was, yeah, I mean, crap. I mean, I post on there from time to time. I'm not worried about, them calling my supervisor, but I mean, if the intent is, the airmen posting anything on there beyond just comments or whatever, now they're not going to do it, because again, something that, I mean, it was kind of silly, I guess is the best word. Something silly garnered a response. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't insulting. It wasn't, at the best, it was grazed into the unprofessional
Yep.
realm, but that was about it.
Yeah,
So-
I have to 100% agree, and that's why I was so irritated by the response to something that was so trivial. Again, now if this was something that he had been doing on several of her posts and just kept showing up and doing that, okay, cool. But I would still message that person directly instead of making a public thing out of it. And then I mean, you basically put this kid on the chopping block, public execution, and now no one else is going to want to, she basically used him to set an example to anybody else that's on social media, and now might be scared to post something, to comment on there, especially if they're still active duty.
Yeah, and I haven't heard anything, but I wonder what about his crew? Like, obviously, the crew is like a loosely affiliated, some online friends, or either coordinated or just people that have hitched onto the BAS or base sort of bandwagon. But was this guy the only guy that got a phone call and had to answer for this? Because they alluded to the fact that anyone and everyone that had said base or BAS more than once was going to kind of answer for it. I don't know anything, and it could be it was done low key, and this guy just happened to be the one that was picked out of the herd to be made an example of. But if you think about it, the Chief Master of the Air Force, their job is to know the pulse of the entire enlisted force, and the lower the rank they can kind of touch and understand, the more effective they're going to be as the Chief Master in the Air Force. And I think the reaction really shows that there's a communication gap. They didn't recognize that there's a potential for this to be something humorous. And I'll even concede that if it was multiple times, I still think that if she had just posted, it's BAS like the fish, this doesn't, I'll save you all your future comments so you don't have to keep coming back here. And like, if the Chief Master in the Air Force calls on that, I truly believe that's exactly what Chief Wright would have done. He would have said it, and he said, now I've spared you from coming back. And what they're doing is they're implying, don't fucking come back here with this dumbass shit. or else next time it's going to hurt. And then everybody goes, okay, I felt the sting of that. I'm going to walk away, and they get better, and maybe other trolls sort of see it, type of deal. But I feel like as a chief master on the Air Force, the mandate is to know the pulse of the force. And I think this absolutely handicapped them.
Yeah.
And then the post phone call Facebook post, like that was very much a PA crafted response. And I think it was after 36 hours of the shitstorm, I think the chief master in the Air Force office realized that they had pulled the trigger on the wrong fucking comment. I think they realized everything we just talked about for the last 20 minutes, I think they fucking figured out. Like, that wasn't right. We need to fucking recover this because we're about to lose the trust of the people because we hammered somebody over something small. So then they tried to flip it into, let's collaborate. We're going to solve this together, right? Yeah. Which leads to my question was, what assurances have you gotten from this guy's chain of command that there isn't going to be career impacting administrative action, which got, 105 sort of likes or reactions. And a bunch of people said nothing. This guy's going to get screwed. And the reason I did that was like, I think it's important for the chief master sergeant to weigh in and say, does she really want to collaborate with this guy? Does she want to give him a chance to recover? Does she want him to give him to grow? Does she want him to go out into the Air Force and kind of train people and teach people from his experience? Or do we want to just like burn the fuck out of him? And it's even worse because it's like, it's a wink and a nod, like, oh, I had a conversation with him. But when you don't like explicitly say, and there's no need for further action, what you're doing is you're implying to his chain there needs to be further action, especially when you have a bunch of people that are worried about their perceptions. Do people think I'm going to be a bad commander because this guy went rogue? Nobody's going to fucking think that except commanders that are worried about their perceptions. But Jim, I've talked a lot and you keep wanting to talk and you look like you want to say something.
Oh, no, I was just thinking as you were talking, I was, because I saw your question and I was like, I don't know if he'll get a response simply because legal, the legal might look at that and go, man, if they respond to anything and say, yep, he's good, or yep, the minute he goes out and gets a speeding ticket on base or something, he'll whip this out and said, oh no, look, they said this is, you guys are piling on or whatever, and she said I'm okay.
Yeah, but that's also like, it's not like, trust me, as somebody that has faced retaliation, the fucking bar is really high, apparently, because IG said me going from lead pro super to EOR super, turning up from a tech sergeant sitting in a truck was not retaliatory. I know that discipline is supposed to be metered to the person and by need, but if it's something where it's like for every speeding ticket, for every PT fail, for every time, as long as you're treating them in line with how you treat everybody else, you're not going to have a strong retaliation sort of claim. But the issue is she didn't like do that. So the question is, does she? I mean, she even said in response, I now understand that he didn't mean disrespect. He said something similar. Okay, so if the kid genuinely didn't want to be an asshole and she's saying it and he's saying it, why can't we just say, leadership, I've taken care of it. Nothing else needs to be done. That's it.
Yeah. I just I find it interesting that your comment won't get an answer, but his did. Your comment has a lot more significance to it than is it bass or base.
Oh, sure. Besides the 100 reactions and the 15 replies, I also have a top fan badge, and I feel like that should really like advance me to the top. You've reached the height. You've reached the heights of your life. I'm literally talking to two top fans of my page right now, so I know you guys understand the elite class that you're a part of. Okay, so she made that comment, and a lot of the comments in the thread were really split between that's good, we need to hold people accountable, and we need to keep people in their place, and this was disrespectful, and the other half were this was abusive and this was not what we need. And then the gentleman's kind of reply came along, and as I read earlier, it was a very kind of well-crafted, kind of suspicious that it wasn't either crafted coordinating with the chief master in the Air Force in her office, or his chain kind of, or his local PA crafting a response. And it very well might be, and this is distinctly possible because I understand how the mechanisms of the Air Force works, it very well might be you do this apology this way, and then you won't face these sort of impacts. Like this is an important issue for the Air Force, and we need to like take care of everything. Jim?
I mean, I kind of agree.
Yeah, I think there could. I mean, it's not being in a room with a first sergeant, but I'm trying to having, like you said, knowing how this stuff. There was probably some, hey, did you learn your if you learned your lesson and walked on eggshells for 48 hours, show me how you're gonna. I don't want to say make right, but have you learned? And whether he's learned or not, that's the canvas you put together, and the outward appearances. It's all good now. I learned my lesson. I mean, we're really not in his head. So I mean, I probably think if I was out there having just been put through that, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do that. But yeah, I got I think he's probably really put off right now, and he did that to make everything right because he feels intimidated.
Yeah, and that's also not to say that he couldn't have crafted it on his own. It was very.
Oh no, this is speculation. I mean, speculation based on
our experiences,
and how I've seen things gone out in the past. I mean, me personally, I always do the having not been in the job, but kind of knowing the ins and outs. I'm like, if I was the chief for a day, I would have probably made some kind of give him some kind of funny response answer the very first time, make it humorous, and the guy walks away going, hey, that's a real person. Haha, I got a response from the chief. Hey, check this out. Those kind of things, to where, not that it's a popularity contest, but now there's no doubt where you stand with getting along with people and having a sense of humor, rather than feel, the perception is you're up on some pedestal and you're kind of, this position or this place versus a real person.
It seems like I think they're starting to lock down on all of this now. I don't think the Chief Master in the Air Force, I don't think anybody in her office is going to address this or respond to this. I think they've moved on. Well, I don't think they've moved on. I think that it's radioactive. And if they dip their toe in, it's only going to get fucking worse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it did bring up an interesting point. And I don't have this is all speculation and rumor, so I don't want anybody to take this as fact, and I'm saying it's not fact. But I've been told that she didn't actually write that original message. There was somebody on her PA team operating on her behalf. So what's interesting is on her page, it says in her about section, this is the official Facebook page of Chief Master in the Air Force, Joanne S. Bass. Managing the page is a team effort, but the words posted here are 100% hers. Now, it's not clear if we're talking about the words posted in her post or the words posted in her comments, but to me, it implies if there's words on this page from Chief Master in the Air Force Bass, it is from her. Mm-hmm. So the problem begins with, I'm being told that it was somebody on her PA team that did this, which means she might have given them a mandate, like we need to start curbing social media. It might have been an overzealous person. I suspect that once the shit hit the fan, the Chief Master in the Air Force was probably really fucking irritated with her PA team, because the point of the PA team is not to do this. Like, this is the opposite of what the PA team is supposed to be. So besides the fact that I've been told that it wasn't her that made the comment, which is a little bit problematic, because it's almost like a Master Sergeant on PA was operating with the authority of the Chief Master in the Air Force and all the sort of damage that would do to this young man, because that's the perception. But the second thing that kind of supports that is when I made a comment to the Chief Master in the Air Force asking for suicide data, which, by the way, I'm still waiting for, which is why we haven't done any congressional action broadly yet. Like, I sent her a message at like 11 o'clock at night to follow up, and I got the automatic response of, we'll get back to you or whatever. And then 5 minutes later, I got a personal message that was signed at the bottom, like Best Joe, like the shorthand for her first name. And I'm seeing now other shared screenshots of exchanges between people and her page, and it's not signed that way, which makes me believe that when she's the one responding to private messages over her page, she's signing it Joe. So that also tells me that if there's some private messages that are not signed with her name, that means there are also people on her PA team that are speaking on her behalf, which really goes against what her about section says. So I'm only doing all this because I think it's an interesting dynamic of, we have a guy that made a dumb / smart ass comment. Is it Bass or Base? And he got hemmed up publicly and wouldn't get assurances and protection that his chain wasn't going to destroy him. While simultaneously, I believe that someone on the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force PA team contributed to this, did not get hemmed up publicly, and is very likely not going to suffer any adverse career effects, which goes to the perception of the rules apply to thee, but not to me, where we're going to do this to you, but we're not necessarily going to do this to our person. And I think that's also kind of fucking problematic, where they recognize that if you get in trouble, you need to be able to recover. But if it's only if I know you, if you're my person, because you made me look bad. But if that was truly a PA person that made that statement, I promise you the Chief Master of the Air Force was really pissed the fuck off at the mess that was made.
I honestly really think that's what happened. I don't think that she even does her own emails from work. You know what I mean? Like not all of the time, obviously. I'm sure she has to do her own, obviously. But, you know, there's just like, you know, Congress, there's filtering and there's people that help her with that kind of stuff. I know that she has a team that helps her with her social media accounts and shit like that. And that's why I don't know that if it was her, I don't know that she would have responded to that.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? I think what you're saying about that, you know, that it might have just been somebody that was overzealous or whatever the fuck. I'm more inclined to believe that than to believe that it was Chief Bass. I don't think that Chief Bass would have been like, oh, this is worth my time. Let me stop what I'm doing as Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and respond to this dumb ass question.
And of course, now the paradox is she can't say it wasn't her because her page says everything that's said here is 100% her. So now she's in a fucking paradox.
Anytime they use the word I, anytime the word I is used in one of those replies, I mean, anybody perception is going to take it I, not we, they, this office, something or other.
Yeah, it was me. It was I. It was those types of pronouns. Yeah.
Right. So I don't, like I said, I don't think it was handled well, and I think all of us can kind of agree that it was not handled well. But and there was some commentary when we saw the kind of split between the camps where people were like, "There's no big deal, it's blown out of proportion." Other people were like, "Yeah, hold them accountable." There was a lot of commentary, and I asked Ashley specifically over messages, like, "Hey, like I'm a guy, and I may not be able to perceive sexism." And there was a lot of comparisons of they wouldn't have done this to Chief Wright, right? Even though I know that there was some trolling done on Chief Wright, so I'm not exactly sure that's true, but. So I was immediately like, this doesn't seem like it's sexist or misogynist or there's some sort of attack on her as a woman. And I was looking at it just through the window of the exchange. But some of the memes that kind of came out of this, especially recently,
those are for sure sexist.
Right. They are. Like I think we've done a really good job of dissecting where we think everyone went awry in this. And at no time did I alluded to anyone's gender or sexual orientation or anything like that. And I think also it doesn't help that some people are calling her a Karen. I'm not sure if calling someone as a Karen is a misogynistic sort of thing.
No.
I think the guy version is a Kyle, right? Like I know that's not
Kevin.
exactly right. Yeah, or a Kevin, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see that as misogynistic. And she also kind of absolved anybody of claiming that's misogynistic when she put the hashtag not a Karen in her like post phone call reply. But I've seen a lot of, how's it pronounced? It's a silent B and now it's ass, right? But then there's been a lot.
Disgusting.
Then there's been a lot of posts where it's like she's like engaging in lewd acts with a fish, or it's representing her as, it's very much a sexualizing sort of thing. So like, I was literally like, this isn't a fucking sexist, this isn't a misogynistic sort of problem. And then I'm like looking at this dumpster fire of a fucking response from idiots. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't think it was a problem.
Now they made it one.
But now I fucking think it is a problem. Like, and that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because those people that are trying to rail against this, what they perceive to be an injustice, and I probably am a little bit on their side that it's an injustice, like to this kid, they're completely undermining their fucking argument because they're literally showing a toxic fucking online culture that is unregulated and abusive and
demeaning and disrespectful as fuck.
Yeah, so it's like, well, that just fucking blew up, right?
Yeah, now I hope you get phone calls. All of you get phone calls. That's where I'm at. Because that when I first saw that meme, Chris, I was pissed. I was like, okay, let's say we all agree. And I can't be, this is all based on speculation.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot know what it was like to be that person that was responding, whether it was Chief Bass or her PA or whatever, how they might have felt when they read this shit. They might have felt like, if you think about it, and you're at a roll call or commander's call or something, and someone stands up and says, is it Bass or Bass? They're going to get a talking to after or immediately pulled away by their flight chief, right? So to put it into that kind of context, I could kind of understand why, but at the same time, I only saw that it was singled out on this one person. Moving forward, we all understand that we think that it was a little bit heavy-handed, but the response so she even came out and said, we're going to work together. It was a misunderstanding, and now you guys are shit posting about her because of her gender, because you don't like what happened. And and none of us really know, unless like you are Sergeant Banks or anybody else that was a part of that, conversation, I guess, because we don't even know if there was disciplinary action or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, you just completely shit on yourself by doing that, and you're retaliating against something that's really not worth retaliating against. And you're doing it in a way that is dehumanizing and demeaning because of her gender. It's sick. It's fucking sick.
And you're giving her an absolute, all the permission necessary to go harder than what she did with this Bass or Bass thing, because you're literally you're justifying her heavy-handed response. Exactly. So now, like, this is a wild conversation, because at the beginning of the conversation and up till about like 5 fucking minutes ago, I would be like, she overreacted. It's absolutely ridiculous. It was a poor response. But now it's like, I'm genuinely conflicted, because the response to her has been so just toxic and vile, awful. So now it's like, well, she's gonna clean house. Like that's the way it's gonna be.
I wouldn't even be mad if she sees the memes and shit that's coming out about that kind of stuff. Like somebody sends it to her, posts it on her page or what.
I'm sure her team is. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That, I hope, just like that Air Force Times article with the 2 sisters that were deployed, Chief Tibbetts. I don't know if you've seen that. I can't not call you Chief, by the way.
No, that's fine.
Hard not to. I don't know if you've seen the article about the 2 sisters and all that stuff. I was so proud of Chief Bass for coming out and saying that she fully supports these 2 women, because that's exactly what we need to get rid of this shit, disgusting culture that we have in the workplace and online. And so if she comes down even harder because of this, or because of the memes and shit that are coming out about it, I am gonna bring my pitchfork with me and stand right behind her, because it's disgusting.
And what really kind of fucking frustrates me, and Ashley knows this quite well because we correspond frequently. I am fucking spending a lot of time and energy trying to get the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force and the Air Force at large and the DOD to like take time to really kind of work on the culture in aircraft maintenance. And I'm advocating for aircraft maintainers, saying they're maltreated, they're beat up. And it very well could be that these fucking toxic memes are a symptom of just a fucking broken community. Got it. I understand that. Trust me. But they're making shit way more fucking difficult to advocate for them like they're adult human beings that need help, when they're just being like toxic and vile and hateful. And like, there is ample information to critique, and you could I'm not saying you can't badmouth the Chief Master on the Air Force. I'm not saying you can't call her fucking dumb. I'm not saying you can't say she's fucked up. I haven't said some of those, but I've said, others. It's like, you can attack her policy and her decisions and her leadership. You can do all those fucking things. But as soon as you sexualize her And at no way does it contribute to the conversation. And especially when it comes out of the maintenance community specifically, what platform do I have to go to the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and advocate that this community needs her help and her attention?
Yep.
What do I have? Like, what am I doing at that point?
We talked about that in the sexual harassment video that we did. You can talk shit about people all day long. Just don't make it about race. Don't make it about gender, and don't make it about, other discriminating factors, because that has nothing to do with what's going on. If you don't agree with her policy, just like you said, be mad about the fucking policy, but don't go after the fact that she is a female.
Yep. And
that has nothing to do with it.
And it also could be, like I said, that I think maintainers, and I'm a maintainer, like Ashley's a maintainer and Jim's a maintainer. I think maintainers are socially handicapped when it comes to profanity, and recognizing the difference between just being profane as a adjective and profane being lewd and inappropriate. They don't fucking understand the two. And if you don't understand the two, shut the fuck up. You're making it worse. You're feeding into her to do this again. And it could be, it's just, you want to flip the whole fucking table over. You don't want to play the game. And what's worse is a lot of the people doing it are retirees, people bragging about their DD-214 status. And what they're going to do is they're going to drag some active duty people. That Air Force fucking social media reg, if you laugh, react, heart, when someone like the lewd picture of, supposed to represent the chief with in a very inappropriate sort of meme, and an active duty person likes that, shares it, or reacts to it, there's like a potential for career impacts. And it's like, if we're trying to draw suicides down, if we're trying to make our culture better, then I don't need separated DD-214 fucking bro warriors chucking shit posting memes that they get to do onto a fire and burning up their active duty people and ruining their fucking careers. Like, that's not fucking helpful.
Also, I just wanted to touch on the AFI real quick, because I don't have it written down, but I did not know that existed. And so I am sure that there are other people that are my peers or younger that don't know that exists. So anybody that's watching this video, please look into the AFI for social media, because it's real. It does exist, and there are punitive actions.
Yeah, and I'm gonna post a link to it on here. But what's interesting is it really restricts what you can do on social media. It also says you're not allowed to make an account misrepresenting your identity or claiming to be the identity of somebody else. Like, I mean that's really hard to prove. You can make an anonymous account and probably get away with it, but it's very much a lockdown sort of thing. And if you get caught, especially after the BAS or base thing, every commander is going to be highly sensitive to it. And the stuff that's coming out now is way worse than base or BAS. And if you get wrapped up in it, you're not going to get the outpouring of support that Banks got, because his was like on the line. You're not going to get that.
No.
Sorry, Jim. I'm sure you have a lot.
Oh no. I just listened in. No, that was one of my first thoughts. I think I posted was, would he have asked that? Some of the things you say on social media, and it could be my age showing a little bit, but I always was operating under the premise of I wouldn't ask her anything on social media or say anything to her on social media that I wouldn't ask her if she asked me if I had a question or made a post or something that I wouldn't do if she was standing in the room or on the telephone or whatever. And then, the more I think about it, I'm like, well, it's the 21st century. There's a little more latitude there. But then again, the when in doubt, don't. That's I go back to that little snippet of, he probably shouldn't have done it, just because he probably, depending on if it really was a question, then he probably would have. But if he was trolling, like she said, then maybe not. But I still maintain that I think we all do. It got blown way out of proportion. There was an easier way to shut it down.
Yeah, and and I think when people draw the comparison between the social media and the all call, I think that's not fair, because she would have been introduced at the all call as the 19th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant Joanne S. Bass. Like,
that's true.
You don't have the fucking.
I like I said, anymore. That's why I said I was thinking. It's a a generational thing, trying to think through social media. The old school me is like, I probably wouldn't have asked that, but then now that I'm thinking, Yeah, times are changing. Social media has kind of evolutionized the way people communicate, because on most days a staff sergeant at wherever pick a base he was at wouldn't have had 24/7 access to.
Yep.
You can go to General Brown's page right now, and I guarantee you that's policed by PA, but you could go to General Brown's page and have 24 to make it, a comment 24/7 as well.
Yeah.
And
I still don't think that it's, if you, like you said, if you wouldn't say it to them to their face or on the phone or in an email, that's professionalism. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll go back to what Jim, he had commented on one of the pictures on the Facebook page, I think yesterday or something. And he said, this is going to end up defining her tenure as Chief Master on the Air Force. And that's kind of really fucking unfortunate, because it's not necessarily predetermined outcome that it defined it, but it's certainly going to be talked about, and it requires a recovery and it requires a building of trust. And I think with the escalation of outrage on the other side, I think it's going to detract from her getting a whole lot of fucking work done. And that's a foul on her for the response that kind of generated it. And it's also a foul on the community for proving that she needed to be heavy-handed with bullying on social media. So I think it's really unfortunate, because I think there's a lot of important issues. Like you said, Jim, like there's much more important things we could be doing right now. And now we're not doing it. So like, that's kind of like, I guess the wrap up. Like that's all I got, but I think it sucks. So final thoughts or I don't know, advice to either people broadly on social media, or if in the off chance that the Chief Master on the Air Force listens to this, which spoiler, they don't, what would you say to her or her team?
Hindsight's always, yeah. I'll go ahead.
Oh, so I just wanted to say, if she does listen to this, I'm a fan of hers. I appreciate what she's trying to do. I appreciate that, although, as maintainers, we're trying to get people to pay attention to certain cultures and things that are going on within maintenance. And so I know that she's looking into or trying to get involved in career fields that she doesn't know a whole lot about. I appreciate that she is, trying to get rid of toxic cultures, like, when we were talking about the Air Force Times article and those two sisters. So I 100% am behind those moves and that general direction that she's trying to go in when it comes to getting rid of toxicity. I think that the original comment about, is it Bass or Base, it did not require a response. It could have just been left at that or done privately. But like we said, moving forward, I think that what's going on now, post Sergeant Banks conversations, I think is going to make shit worse for a lot more people, because they can't figure out how to act right. That's my final thoughts.
Jim?
Yeah, I was kind of trying to mark my fingers. Wasn't repeating a lot of things, but well, first of all, and I think we all agree, we're not critiquing like her as a person or her, it's just this one situation. I'm, new to the job, sometimes things fall out of control. And I think there's some learning going on in more than just Sergeant Banks's head, right now. But I think, again, I keep going back to, hopefully the learning is next time something like, something that trivial, just keep scrolling, or like you said, I keep going back to that one-on-one. This whole thing could have been just shut down with an email or a text or whatever. Even it was to the kid's first sergeant, and even he's just sitting in the room when they have a one-on-one conversation with a flight chief there, and she explained to him that it's a distraction or whatever in an unintimidating way. That's fine. But I keep going back to I'd have just made a jovial joke or comment about Bass versus Base or whatever, and probably made the kid's day. But that's just me.
Yeah, like I agree. And I think Jimmy made a good point earlier where like she has big shoes to fill when it comes to Chief Wright. And I think he really did set a very, much like we talked about in the first podcast, Jim, I think Chief Wright was exceptionally approachable. And I think what you're getting is you're getting a bunch of people that assumed or expected that sort of environment or that culture carried from him to her. And it may not, right? But I think I think a really important step for her would to be admit that a mistake was made by the Chief Master in the Air Force or her office. I think that would be a really good first step. Like, yeah, we were too heavy-handed here. And now there's a great opportunity. We were too heavy-handed here, but look at the fucking response and look at these memes. I would fucking, you know, and I'm also definitely not the Chief Master in the Air Force. I would post the worst fucking memes from this event on my page and say, look, yeah, I was wrong. We went a little bit too heavy. If I could go back in time, I probably would have done it different. I'm growing in this job. I'm going to make mistakes, but I want you to know I will accept responsibility and I will do my best for you, which involves growing. But to all the people that said there isn't a problem here, let's look at this. Let's look at how they're, you know, portraying me, how they're attacking me for just being a woman. They're making me look like I'm promiscuous. They're making me look like, you know, like this is what I'm trying to fight.
It's an opportunity to open I think it's kind of getting into the sexism thing is it's an open door. It's maybe opened a door to seize on something bigger to address, or, you know, if they're going to put posters up all over or whatever, they spend a lot of time on,
right.
Whatever the buzz thing is, why not? Hey, look, here's real world examples of why it's a friggin' problem.
Yeah.
You know, not putting up a statistic that people can go, wow, and kind of relate to. They see it and they see somebody in the same uniform they're wearing, or, you know, serving the same military they serve, being vilified for her gender.
Yep. Yeah. Like, so my advice and what I would like to see, like I said, is recognize it wasn't the best response, admit to it, come clean, apologize, promise to do better moving forward, but then also show that while the base and bass thing didn't seem like a big deal, it very well could be the tip of the iceberg for all this horrible toxic shit that's underneath. And I wasn't convinced it was sexist per se, but after seeing the response from, you know, a lot of these people, I think it is. And there's a distinct possibility that I'm going to lose like a whole bunch of listeners that are maintainers from this. And to be perfectly honest, if you're so fucking stupid that you're trying to attack the Chief Master in the Air Force and not pointing out egregious errors in judgment and policy that are readily available for you to dissect, if you're too stupid to articulate a thought on that, and instead you're going to represent her as a porn star, you could happily unfollow this fucking podcast and the page and go straight to fucking hell. Like, I got nothing for you, and you lack the mental capacity. So, well, I'll check with the Diary of a Mixed Woman. I'll check my numbers and see if it goes down. That'll let me know how many idiots I had following me. But other than that, I think we're done. I really can't thank you guys enough for taking the time. This was a short notice thing, and I appreciate it. And I love talking to you too. So that's all I got. And adios. That's the show. I can't thank you enough for reading, listening, and watching and supporting everything that I've done with 20 Years Done. If you're new to this podcast, I recommend you go to 20yearsdone.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/20yearsdone.